Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Batchelor and today we are talking about People's Ford. It's the largest dealer, it's the latest dealer to publish its results for the year ended July 31st, 2021. And what results they are. I mean, profit before tax was up 165% to just under £8 million, while turnover was up 20%. It's the firm's strongest performance in its 38-year history. Joining me to chat more about this is Chairman Brian Gilda. Hello, Brian.
James, good morning to you.
Lovely to have you on, Brian. Now, just for a bit of context for people watching, this time last year, your accounts showed profits had tumbled from nearly 4.6 million the year before to just over 3 million. Now, 12 months on, you're reporting a profit of 7.98 million. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, really, does it? Apart from that, what are the highlights for you?
Well, I think the highlight really was that we managed to turn in the best performance in 38 years. So we can start with that. But really, the real story is that we set ourselves up really to make sure that when we come out of lockdown, that we were in the best position to be in to take advantage of it, because it was reasonably obvious from what we're learning, reading in all the media, that there was a pent-up demand for vehicles. And since we'd been open all the ways down the line, then our DNA, our mental capacity was good. Our after-sales activity was looking after the blue light services. So we didn't have to stop the engine, crank it up, fill it full of oil, and then give it a kick. We were already in that mode to get things done properly. So, and when the spike came, we were in a good place to be. We had the right stock, we had the right people, they were motivated to do it. Bang, off we went.
Yeah. And also you didn't make anybody redundant either, did you? So there must have been a good feeling within the business.
Indeed. You know, we set out, in fact, at the very beginning, I've been through a few financial world crises from beginning to end. I didn't think I would see anything like this, I hasten to add. But the one thing we recognised before we went into the financial year was that we had to look after our staff even better than we would normally do, because this wasn't a financial crisis, this was a pandemic. People were concerned about what was happening to them. So we set our stall out to look at that even more carefully than normally would. We actually had one redundancy during the whole period, which was unavoidable. And so I think we came out of it having done passed the test that we set our own selves to do.
Yeah. You mentioned there that you've been through a few sort of financial crises. I know this wasn't financial, it was a pandemic, but what made this different from other sort of crises to the business in the past?
Yeah. Well, if you think about the financial crisis, which was really just horrible, then everything was kind of out with your control. You know, if the banks had decided, God bless Gordon Brown, I was watching him with great patience the other night. We were him and Tony Blair. I didn't know both of them, but I was involved with both of them at one stage. So it was all in somebody's hand. You had the whole of the economy, you had everybody's well-being, you had your children's well-being, etc., all wrapped up in decisions, which eventually came right. The problem with the pandemic was there were people who were plainly making decisions and making horrible decisions, which were affecting the life of my staff, of their relatives and friends and everybody in the community. So that was quite scary, I have to say. I haven't had to deal with that before. So therefore, when we sat down looking to what we need to do, we made the safety and stuff and the security absolutely 100%. And the staff were happy we did for all these reasons, because they then looked after the customers and they bought oodles of cars and vans off us.
Well, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Now, I suppose an added challenge, really, was that, I mean, you've got 6 Ford dealerships, 3 in central Scotland and 3 in the northwest of England. I would imagine that you experienced extra difficulties than other dealers because of different government restrictions in Scotland and in England on selling cars. I mean, was that actually a challenge, or am I just making that up?
No, you're absolutely correct. We had to wait patiently for what the national government would do, and then we knew almost certainly that the lovely Nicola Sturgeon would do something entirely different, and of course, so it turned out to be. So we were waiting for how is the best way to be benign with this. she had to show something that was different. That's her style. We just didn't know what the extent of it was, and we had to work around it. There was no point in exhausting time and trying to find a way around this woman. You just have to go on with it. So it did take longer. It was exasperating. It was a bit frustrating, but we got used to it and got on there.
Yeah. Well, furlough, let's just briefly talk about that. I mean, it was a huge lifeline for dealers. I mean, it practically kept dealers in business, really, didn't it? I mean, how many staff did you have to put on the scheme, and how much support did you take from the government?
We took £880,000 during the financial year, which was specific to the job retention scheme. And as I said, we set out to do what the job retention scheme said. We were going to look after our staff, and apart from one redundancy, we did that. It was an exceptionally clever piece of financial engineering by the government. And of course, it's now come to an end, and there's going to be consequences for that as well, as yet unknown, because there is a separate issue, which we're all dealing with just now, which is the semiconductor problem we have. So we haven't got over COVID. We've managed to work ourselves through COVID, come out the other side just in time to find something else which is affecting our business, which I'm sure you know all about.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking to Dash Gupta yesterday, and he just said he doesn't know what a normal year looks like now, because it's just we've gone from one thing to the other. And but above all, it shows how resilient the sector is, really, just to be able to keep on with all of what's being thrown at it.
When you think about that, James, I mean, we've had a recession in our industry since the end of the Second World War. We have, in some ways, we have the skinniest margins that you can ever think about. I mean, my margins in this last year were 2.75%. Now, that'll probably put me in the upper quartile of returns in the industry at 2.75%. Yeah, I know. So it doesn't give you much wriggle room with regard to that. But somehow or other, we managed to, with the help of our manufacturer partners, get through the pain barrier and come out the other side. This particular one with regard to semiconductors, that's a new one in me. I haven't seen this before.
Yeah. I'll return to new cars in a second. Let's just talk a little bit about online, because I know you've got a strong online presence before COVID hit, but would you say that you've become stronger online because of COVID and through COVID?
The straight answer to that is yes. The subheading of that is, are we doing better as a consequence to it? We're certainly paying more attention to it. To be honest with you, I read some of the numbers that are coming out from some of the dealers in terms of what they're doing, and I think they're smoking something, but maybe that's just me. Maybe they are doing these numbers. We are not doing those numbers as yet. We are somewhere between 5 and 10% top whack. So we've got a big journey to go, but rather we're honest with ourselves and say we understand what the task in hand is, and then we can get on with it. Certainly, we gravitated to online sales quite early in the process because we could see that was inevitable apart from anything else. And but we have a journey to go.
Yeah. And I mean, really, there is a lot of talk about online car sales, but when you look at the numbers for people who are doing a proper end-to-end online transaction, it's nowhere near there yet, is it? It's not the norm by any means, and it's going to take quite some time for that to actually change, isn't it?
It is, yes. I mean, it will change and it will become more dramatic. It'll be a higher percentage of our volume than ever before, but it's not Amazon. You know, I ordered my Billy Connolly book, in fact, on Saturday, got it on Sunday, fine. But, you know, this is a different type of product, different costs, different implications of part exchanges. Nobody goes into a bookshop and says, well, I'm going to trade in last year's Billy Connolly book and get another one, you know. So, you know, we are in a different cycle of business in retail from most. But that doesn't mean to say that we can get away with the energies that the marketplace, in particular the consumer, is showing. They're showing they have more interest in going end to end, but it's not a level that is determining life and death right now. But maybe it will get that far.
Yeah. What's your view on the online players like Kazoo and Cinch? Do you think they're actually doing anything differently, or is it nicely repackaged as though they're doing something different?
Well, Oh gosh, how can I put this diplomatically? I remember talking to Tom Farmer when he was saying how inefficient we were at selling tyres. And of course, he proved the point that we were inefficient at selling tyres, and of course then proved that he could buy tyres cheaper than anybody else. So these guys are in the marketplace. They have a game plan. They're sticking with it. They are well financed, and they want to stay in that segment of the marketplace. I suppose it's always a sense of wonderment to me why some parts of our industry always get picked on, and it's maybe at some stage it's after sales, or it's tires, or in fact it's now used cars. And the transition of these players going back over the years has got some successes, lots of failures. So I said in my note that I'll be interested to see who of these players will still be here same time next year. But of course, they may be morphed into something completely different that we don't even know about right now. So I wait, and I wait and wonder.
Yeah. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, you look at the likes of Kazoo, who are making a lot of losses at the moment. You guys aren't making losses. The big listed dealer groups, they're making big profits as well. It's all about getting the name out there at the moment, isn't it? But whether customers are actually willing to do a fully end-to-end online sales process, as opposed to going to one of your dealerships and being, obvious customer service and seeing the car before buying, the jury is out, isn't it?
Yes, well, the thing about it is, James, we've got to have our shiny face all the time. For Jane, it's on reception, or Jimmy, it's in the service department, the technician, or the salespeople. We've got to have our shiny face all the time. And that ain't going to change no matter who comes into the marketplace. So we work on the principle that if we can do that effectively, positively, and in the best interest of both consumer and ourselves, we stand a good chance of looking after that customer and having them coming back. And our own numbers shows that our customers are pretty loyal. The thing that's also going to make the difference going forward is how the industry is going to change from normally aspirated vehicles into electric vehicles. So in maybe 3 years' time, certainly 3 years to 4 years' time, the industry will have changed again, and the manufacturers are going to determine how they want to go to market in that context. So we have some big changes coming along, and the consumer, having said that, will decide everything. They'll decide what they want to do.
Yeah, just an interesting point that came up this week with discussions with other dealers is that in 3 years' time, like you just mentioned, there's probably going to be a used car shortage because there aren't any new cars coming through at the moment. So again, in 3 years' time, the pitch is going to be totally different.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about 3 years' time it'll be that different for that reason. James may be right. Certainly the problems we have just now will run into 22. Hopefully not much longer than Q1, but I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. So how challenging is it to actually get hold of good quality used cars at the moment?
It's probably about as important as breathing, would be my assessment. It's impossible in as much as, because the drop down model that we have from selling a new vehicle to getting the part exchange in, to selling that and then getting the next part exchange arising, that model's shot to pieces right now. Yeah. And some of the benefactors of that obviously are those companies who are set up to buy a car on the doorstep or whatever. So that's another detractor, if you like. So having not a lot of new cars available to us, not a lot of commercial vehicles available to us, is going to have an effect on our financial results during the course of this year. I suspect it would have the same effect with most others. So we've got to hang on by our fingertips in the hope that the semiconductor issue does in fact get better than I'm presently thinking.
Yeah. Well, presumably you've had to, in light of what you've just said, presumably you've had to change the ways in which you acquire used car stock because you haven't got the customers coming in and naturally getting hold of their used cars.
Yes, I mean, I think everybody and their dog is out looking for used vehicle stock right now, whether it's the buyers or whether they're going to the auctions. And the and these vehicles are continuing to be sold in auctions and privately. But we're sensing, I'm not sure whether we're right, but we're certainly sensing that that pricing mechanism is at the top of the arc. And because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you buy a car for, that's kind of, anybody can buy more cars. It's what you sell them for that's the determination. And we can sort of sense it's arcing and probably in the consumer saying, I don't care about semiconductors, I'm not going to pay that price for your vehicle. I'll wait. And of course, that is the traditional position of a consumer. If it doesn't work for them, I'll wait.
Yeah. Are you actually managing to make money on used cars, or is it just slimmer margins?
Oh no! It's it's a very profitable part of my business. I must be honest with you. The volumes of that, but the return on the return on sales is at the top end of the scale.
Let's just talk a little bit about new cars. Now, I mean, last month it was the first time that Ford weren't in the top 10 bestsellers at all, which I can't remember that happening before.
Nor I.
And I know it's not an obvious, it's not a normal environment we're working in at the moment. Are you worried about that, or do you just think this is just a temporary blip and things will get back to normal mid next year?
Are you talking about Ford specific?
Well, Ford specifically, and also the market in general.
I think really what Ford have chosen to do is to be very selective with regard to those markets that they want to manufacture vehicles to sell into. They had a high conversion in significant fleets and rental companies. So when you pair those volumes out, you tend to get a more specific position of what's happening. Although, let's be blunt, some of the manufacturers are growing quite well during this last period. So the likes of Puma, which is a great car, Ranger, which is a terrific truck, Transit, which is a franchise of merit in its own word, you've really got to look at that part of Ford and around, because what we're losing out on in terms of the new vehicle part of it, we're absolutely making up for in the commercial vehicle part of our business, where the volumes are strong, the product is fantastic, there's more and better coming. So we're kind of going to just have to get used to the fact that being at the top of the tree may not, in the fullness of time, prove to be the place that we're going to get our return on. And I've been in business as a Ford dealer for a long time, so that's an interesting concept. I can't even remember saying these words before, so you get it first. So we just need to adjust our thinking to what's going forward. The manufacturer is going to produce cars for the market that they believe they can get a proper return on their investment. And it's interesting, they made an investment in Halewood yesterday, which is terrific. Because, I mean, the one thing I do know about Ford is they're all in on it, completely and absolutely all in. I was in Cologne a couple of weeks ago, looking at some product coming, some of it still in clay, and they've really got it. They really have got it. So please God, they have enough of it manufacturing for us all to get a return on our investment. Yeah,
well, the deal with Volkswagen will definitely help with that. That's one of the more interesting mergers that's happened in recent times, isn't it?
It's phenomenal. I hadn't appreciated the scale, I must be honest with you, but now I do appreciate the scale, and it is a significant JV, and I can understand why they're doing it for both companies, and so I wish them well.
Yeah.
And wishing them well, plainly, I'm wishing myself well as well, because it has to work.
It's fine. You can urge yourself on. It's fine.
I can urge yourself, no problem at
all. Now, I think it's fair to say you're a busy man. I mean, not only are you the chairman of People's, but you're on the Ford UK Dealer Council and a number of other roles. So you are a good man to ask this question, really. I mean, for the future of retail, we've spoken about online just a second ago, but there's this other concept that a lot of manufacturers are mulling over at the moment, which is agency sales. I mean, is Ford considering this? And do you think this is a good thing for the dealer network and for the consumer?
If you take it last question first, the consumer is only interested. They're not particularly interested in whether it's a block exemption agreement, an agency agreement, or you can pay the vehicle with condensed cow dung. What they're interested in is something that gets them the product they want. So let's keep that thought. In terms of the manufacturers, they have divisions of people who sit down and try and structurally disassemble what the relationships are on distribution, because undoubtedly their costs are significant in that particular channel. So it's not surprising that all the manufacturers are looking at how they can rearrange the furniture and distribution. Now, whether that translates out to block exemption for us or agency for Stellantis or whatever remains to be seen. I think the position is still under review with Ford, and we'll wait until such times as they want to talk to us about it in the dealer council. And at that stage, I'll maybe have another conversation with you, James. But at the moment, it's kind of transient. They haven't come up with an opinion, but I would be absolutely sure they're considering all opportunities to make this work for them.
Yeah. Now, just my last question to you. Now, you're rapidly homing in on 40 years.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, sorry to raise that.
No, that's all. No.
So you're rapidly homing in 40 years since you started People's. I mean, the retail world was very different then. Ford was a very different company as well.
It was.
Just tell us why you started all those years ago, and for you, what does the future hold?
I started. I was the second buyer of a Ford entity through institutional funds. The first one was a company called Dagenham Motors, which you may or may not remember. So Dagenham Motors bought into that business through institutional funders. I was the second. It took me 11 months to raise the money. 9 months I was on the dole. So by the time it got to putting the name on the door, I'd have been quite happy to have called it James Batchelor Motors, to be honest with you, just to get the place home. But my aspirations, in fact, were I'd get fed up working for people who were in the industry for the wrong reasons and couldn't understand what it was about. So getting the opportunity to, so Ford said to me, if you can raise the money, you've got this opportunity. And I said, terrific. And I said, where is it? And they said, Bathgate. Now, if God was going to have an enema, that's probably where he would have it, because Bathgate and the dealership itself had been bust 3 times before. So, I mean, they weren't saying, here's the best, they were just sort of, here's something that's needing work. If you go on with it, we'll give you the franchise. And that was all I needed, to be honest with you. All I wanted to do was to get started. And so my aspirations there were to simply make sure I could be the best I could be. In terms of making money was secondary, because that was just a scorecard more than anything else. I was only interested in what the customers wanted. I've never really been a big car guy, although I'm driving a Mustang Mach-E, I have to tell you, which is the first vehicle I bought for myself. I can't remember when, a long time. And so it was getting the opportunity to run my own business. And so I decided not to put my name above the door, and my mother never forgave me. And interestingly enough, I was out for lunch last week with Ian Skelly, a name you might recall from the dark and distant past. And we were extolling how things had changed so much during the period. I'm fortunate my eldest daughter runs in the business. She runs a big slug of it. I've got a very flat management structure, so therefore I'm 2 people away from the technicians or the sales department. But I realized fully that I have to get the right management team in to run it, and I believe I've got that. So they make the vast majority of the decisions when it comes to the higher level strategic stuff. I want to be involved. I want to try and understand what's being, because some of the best decisions I've made are the ones I've said no to. And I suspect that there's going to be things like that are going to come up in the foreseeable future. So I have no problems with regard to where the wealth of my company is or the worth of my company, because I've got a management team that delivers up the kind of results that we're talking about today. And I'm happy that they're in that place, and I will support them to the hilt. Yeah.
Does the business still excite you? The world of retailing?
The world of retailing, I was always interested in people. That was my significant contribution to the world, and some of my background of what I did outside the business and stuff like that was involved with. I was a director of Amnesty for a while, and various other different things. So the people part of it, interestingly, the product I was getting the opportunity to do that was selling cars and vans and commercial vehicles and stuff like that, and after sales. So that part I liked and enjoyed it, and indeed still do. And my own customers still come back to see me on a regular basis to buy a vehicle. Not that I have any competency in being able to do that. I have to hand them over to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Time is a teller.
It really is. My final question is just about sticking with Ford throughout this whole period of time. I mean, over the last 38 years, have you been tempted to sort of diversify the business a bit?
Absolutely. No. We were with a couple of manufacturers prior. If you date this back to when the financial crisis was, I'd taken the view at that stage that some of the manufacturers who I was dealing with or wanted to deal with had a share of the marketplace, which was really quite small, but they still wanted the same amount of my time as Ford did, and I just couldn't see the equator benefit from that. I also, because I'm involved with Ford at all levels, I was also of the opinion that they wouldn't go into Chapter 11, because the Ford family would then, to all intents and purposes, be out of it. So I figured they would stay put and then do everything they could to do it better, which is exactly what they did do. And they brought a guy called Malley into it, and he did a great job for Ford. So if you bring that all the ways forward, I still have cut me in the middle, and I've still got the oval running through me. But I'm realistic to know that with the manufacturer looking to change its imprint in the dealer body going forward, there may or may not be other opportunities that would come into that. I've got 6 dealership locations, 3 in Liverpool, where we control the whole of that neck of the woods, and 3 in the central belt in Scotland. So I'm eager enough to try and make it better, and I'm clever enough, I hope, not to be seduced into something that doesn't make any kind of sense, because I think there's going to be some of that's going to be coming out of the cupboard anytime soon.
Yeah. Brian, we're going to have to leave it there for today, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and congratulations again on the results, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
That's kind of you. Thank you, James. Bye for now.
That's it for today's Car Dealer Live. Join us again very soon. Bye-bye.